So Preston, you wanted to talk about your top 5 or top 10 favorite chapters from Dance of Dragons, and we've discussed doing this type of discussion before, but I think it was Feast instead of Dance. Either way, I feel like you and I have the same favorites, because for me it's Theon's escape, the epilogue, and Jon's final chapter, but it's been a minute since I've gone through Dance. Like, I know you read it every other week.
I wouldn't say that, but you love ranking things, and so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna rank my top 10 Dance chapters in order, and explain like why I think they're good. Just what my personal favorites are, I think, because I think it's pretty interesting once I went through the list and was like, no, this chapter I kind of like, this chapter I like, and why, so you mentioned a few pretty good chapters there, but just going through the list again, I was like, no, you know what, these are my favorite. Like these were.
Can I take a guess at what your top 5 is?
You want to jump there? Okay.
I just think, I feel like the Quentin chapter, the Dragontamer, that's going to be like in your top 5.
Okay, we'll see. Yeah, okay, we'll see.
But start with number 10.
Okay, I have one honorable mention before we get to number 10. My honorable mention is Jon IV, which is Jon and Stannis's like war council, with Jon kind of explaining things. And like going around the map and everything. Like, for some reason, I really like Jon IV, even though somebody once explained to me, like, it actually doesn't really make any sense. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, there's no reason that Stannis, who knows every house in Westeros, and we've been saying that Stannis knows every house in Westeros, wouldn't know about the mountain clans, wouldn't know, that's ridiculous that he wouldn't know about them. Like, one traveled with Ned in the Robert's Rebellion and things like that. Like, this was all just to try to give Jon, make Jon seem cool. It makes no sense that Stannis would be such a dumbass. But I was like, okay, that's kind of true. But to be fair,
let me play devil's advocate on that. Like, Stannis probably knows of them, but Jon would probably know more about them. Like, Stannis knows of them, but I think
Stannis doesn't, he points to this area and he's like, well, why should I care about that? And it's like, well, there's these mountain clans. I'll have to bring up the exact quote, but I think Jon completely schools him on the mountain clans, where it just doesn't really make any sense. Like, of course he would know about these houses. But in general, maybe the mountain clans, as a concept, don't really make that much sense. Let me see if I can quickly find a quote of how stupid Stannis is, uncharacteristically. Here you go. You'll find them here. Jon spread his burned hand across the map, west of the King's Road and south of the Gift. Those mountains? Stannis grew suspicious. I see no castles marked there, no roads, no towns, no villages. The map is not the land, my father often said. Men have lived in the High Valley and mountain meadows for thousands of years, ruled by their clan chiefs. Petty lords. It's just of course Stannis should know that these mountain clans exist. They're major houses that fought in Robert's Rebellion. So Stannis is just being a dumbass. It doesn't really make sense. Though I still love the chapter, but that's my honorable mention. Number 10. I really like The Watcher. That's Areo-Hotah, the Dornish chapter of A Dance with Dragons. It's Areo-Hotah chapters are very dialogue heavy, and I think the dialogue is very interesting and goes really well, and I think it's really gives the Sand Snakes some good time to shine, and Doran Martell some good time to shine, and there's so much cool scheming and things going on in the background with so many different houses turning over cups and Hotah watching everything. And even though he's just the Watcher, not part of it, the chapter still kind of comes alive. And I'm a big fan of the Watcher as a chapter. I actually think the Captain of the Guard, which is the original introduction of the Sand Snakes, I don't even like it as much, because it's more, that chapter is more the Sand Snakes coming in and screaming at Doran. And you get some idea about their personality, and it's it's a pretty good chapter. But I somehow feel that there was better characterization in the Watcher chapter.
For the people who haven't read A Dance of Dragons, the Watcher's the one where Balon Swan comes to Sunspear with the Mountain Skull, right? For the feast?
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have the feast, and then afterwards everybody retires to Doran's Solar, and they talk about their plans. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good one.
Yeah, so number 9, I like Bran III. I think Bran III has a lot going on. George R. Martin spent a lot of time making the chapter very poetic, just in his descriptions of the world. Ravens, crawling up Bran's arms, the wind, the weather outside. You really get a sense of where Bran is in the world. You get a sense of those caverns and tunnels and the underground rivers. You get this sense of the world outside. A lot of time passes in the chapter, and it's done rather well in a very kind of poetic way. It's very clear George spent a lot of time putting together Bran III. Plus, so much happens in that chapter. So much. And, the amount of debates that came out of Bran III specifically are there's just so many with regards to obviously the time travel and the nature of werewoods and Jojen paste and the history of Bloodraven, the nature of the Children of the Forest, Bran's abilities. All of these sorts of things all come together in that chapter, and there's so much to talk about, and it's so rich. And it's really well done, and it's very clear that George spent a lot of time on that chapter. But that's one of my favorites.
That's the one. Which one is Bran 3? Is that the one with Cold Hands? No, right? That's after Cold Hands.
No. Yeah, Bran 3 is essentially they arrive at the Cave of the Three-Eyed Crow at the end of Bran 2, and Bran 3 is his time with the Green Seer, exploring the Weirwood Net, while it takes place over months, and the time passes above, and it's him and Jojen and Mira and Hodor living in the cave.
Is that the one where he sees all those visions with his dad? And
yes,
okay.
It is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's number 9. I really like that one quite a bit. Number 8, A Ghost in Winterfell. A Ghost in Winterfell is the 6th Theon chapter in A Dance with Dragons, and I think at that point, the tension had built up so much that I just remember my first read of Dance and being so engaged with the story. And even though, I think, Theon is as a chapter is better, Ghost of Winterfell, just so many things are coming together, and the murders begin, and he starts you get a lot more just feeling from Theon as he's walking around alone thinking, and you're really in his head, and it's just really there's so many things going on, there's so much tension, it's just all ready to explode. There's so many feelings going on, and I just really love that build up. I thought it's done really well.
This is the chapter where all the sabotage is happening around
exactly.
Winterfell. I don't know if you remember this, but you asked me, this was years ago, how I think Roose would actually die in the book. I think, and I said how I think he probably is going to die, not being stabbed by Ramsay, but something's going to fall on him. And this is one of the chapters that made me think that, because what happens here? One of the towers falls, or I don't remember.
So one of the problems with Winterfell is that they quickly moved the wedding from Barrington to Winterfell as a statement of power, and so they had to very quickly put repairs together in order to host all of these people. And it's just a lot of really shoddily put together buildings, and so there's heavy snowfall. And at one point, the stables collapse from snow atop it. One, because they were put together hastily. Because remember, Ramsay burned Winterfell to the ground, so everything was gone. And so they had to rebuild everything really fast. And so hastily put together, snow on top of it. The stables fall and kill some people. And the thing is, the Great Hall, is also, hastily put together, has a bunch of snow on top of it. It could be, as you're saying, like the roof could collapse and could kill a bunch of people again. They're in a death trap. Whether it will be a death trap. Yeah.
I was all under the impression that the Spear Wives were the ones who were like kind of low key sabotaging things and making everything more shoddy than it was. That was the impression I was under.
Yes. No, you are correct. You are correct. They do take credit for that murder. I'm sure they just maybe sawed through some things, took out a post, and then made it look like it was an accident. So the same sort of thing could happen with the Great Hall. Like someone could take out a post, take out some support.
This is at the chapter where the infamous Wyman Manderley line, had he lived, he would have grown up to be a Frey. This is not that chapter, is it?
No, that happens at the beginning of Theon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I like that chapter.
Yeah, no. Well, that's coming up. That's coming up.
Oh, is it here? Okay.
Yeah, no. Theon's the only one I think, I'm looking at my list. Theon's the only one that gets doubled, unless you count my honorable mention. But yeah. Okay. But that's number 8, A Ghost in Winterfell. Number 7, I would say The King's Prize is one of my favorites. That is Asha's March. And there's just something about I remember reading it and just the days passing and it just feeling like this, like her march towards Winterfell, and you just feel like the anticipation of, oh my God, she's heading towards war. They're going to make it to Winterfell. There's going to be a war. Maybe they'll rescue Theon. Maybe, Stannis and Ramsay and Roose are going to have this huge battle. Oh my God. And like, you're just building towards it. And there's just more and more tension. But I also think The King's Prize just has wonderful characterizations. There's so many great characters. Whether it be Justin Massey or Mormont, not Mage Mormont, but Alysanne Mormont. There's the incredible speech from, I think, the Mountain Clan guy about wanting to live forever, or not wanting to, sarcastically, he's like, yeah, I want to live forever. And the tension between the different religious factions and everything building. I mean, obviously the sacrifice, it kind of continues on. But I think that when they're actually marching and that feeling and just gave it a better feel than the sacrifice.
Is there another Asha chapter on your list? Because I would argue the sacrifice is better because of how it ends with Tycho coming out of nowhere.
I mean, I like the sacrifice. It did not make my top 10. There's 3 Asha chapters in Dance.
Damn.
There's Wayward Bride. There's King's Prize, and there's Sacrifice. And I think King's Prize is better. And I would say just on the speech. He says, I want to live forever in a land where summer lasts 1,000 years. I want a castle in the clouds where I can look down over the world. I want to be 6 and 20 again. When I was 6 and 20, I could fight all day and fuck all night. Sacrifice enters like this weird new surreal environment where they're trapped in the, because they're trapped in the village and it doesn't feel like they're going anywhere. And it becomes really surreal as Stannis is kind of in the distance, and it's a lot of Asha worrying and getting into her head, which is still a great chapter. I just like the marching aspect of the King's Prize. So moving on, number 6, Jon XIII. Jon XIII. Obviously, this is the last chapter of Jon, where he reads the pink letter and gets stabbed. And I think it's one of the most memorable chapters for everyone. And it's just such a release, like all of this tension after so many Jon chapters where not much happens. Like I had actually done a reverse of the worst chapters of A Dance with Dragons. It's an interesting list, by the way. 2 are Jon's, 2 are Daenerys, and 3 are Tyrion's. And I think, yeah. there's a lot of bad, like, I think we all kind of, you know, I think most people when they complain about Dance are just like, the Jon and Dany and Tyrion chapters are horrible. And these are the three main characters that we're supposed to care the most about. And they're just doing nothing. And, so in reverse, like, there's just so many bad chapters. I wouldn't say they're horrible, but, you know, they're just not up there. And so Jon III, after like so many chapters of him doing nothing, like everything, like in building up, everything just kind of releases in Jon XIII. And I think it's done really well. I think that's why you like the sacrifice chapter with Tycho coming out of the snow, is that it was a final release of everything with Asha.
It also comes out of nowhere, like, oh, here you have this Braavosi coming out of, whoa, okay, and oh, Theon and Asha reunited. Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's all good. Number 5, I have the Kingbreaker. I really think that it's not the last Barristan chapter, but it's where Barristan, you know, decides to take out Hizdahr, and it's just a very exciting chapter of him going and you know, the tension of him infiltrating, and even though I realize now on reread that Barristan is not a great character, he's not supposed to be this hero, he's kind of supposed to be a dumbass. For my first read, I was just like, yeah, he's taking control. And then it takes you a second read before you're like, oh wait, he was kind of tricked by the shave pate, into doing this. What a dumbass. But on my first read, you're like, oh my God, he's so great. Oh, he's taking control for Daenerys, you know, and, it feels like this glorious, glorious scene of him, like taking out, like him going to battle and fighting against the pit fighter and stuff like that. But I think it's a really well done chapter.
And the shave pate tricks him.
Oh, he convinces him that like Hizdahr is responsible for all of these crimes when there's no evidence of it. Yeah, I mean, if you go back and read the Daenerys chapters, it's pretty clear that the shave pate. So I mean, on a basic level, like the shave pate wants revolution, and Hizdahr wants slow change, moderation. And this is like reflected in their haircuts, you know, like Shave Pate has shaved his head while Hizdahr has gotten a haircut, you know, while the old timers had these crazy hairstyles. And so like long hair is conservatism. Shaved head is radicalism. And then like Hizdahr is the moderation. Right. And so Shave Pate is pushing Barristan into overthrowing the king and making Hizdahr seem like he, you know, murdered Dany and is trying to bring slavery back and in league with the Sons of the Harpy when there's no evidence of any of that. So
I got tricked too, because I always thought Hizdahr was guilty because of the locusts.
I mean, what evidence do you have that it's that he did the locusts? There's none, really. He didn't eat them because he doesn't like spicy food. I mean, that's about it. Like, you know, there's no
Doesn't he offer it to Daenerys at one point?
Sure. You know, but it doesn't really make sense.
No, that's not enough.
Well, keep in mind that like Strong Belwas eats the entire bowl and doesn't die. So had Dany had one single locust, nothing would have happened to her. Right? She would have had to eat like the entire bowl or something, you know. Which is why my theory that the target was actually Strong Belwas. You know, like some people actually think that the target was Hizdahr, which would make sense as well. But no, we have no idea who poisoned the honey locusts or who is the target. But yeah, I mean, maybe. But go back sometime and read it thinking like, because Shave Pate is supposed to be a Littlefinger stand-in. You know, he's supposed to be tricking Barristan and putting wild ideas in his head. Okay, so after that, number 4, I love Victarion. I think Victarion is again, like, I love the marching aspect of Victarion, his ship heading towards Slaver's Bay, but I also just think he's so fucking hilariously horrible. Like, he's just like, there's so many little scenes that are so dark and so funny where, you know, they like, you know, he rescues all of these like beautiful sex workers and then like puts them on a boat and starts them on fire and like all of these different things where you're just like, oh my God, this guy's freaking nuts. It's so dark and so weird. Or like, you know, some guy dies because he's like, oh, let me sail to this Dothraki Sea. And he's like, dude, like the Dothraki Sea is fields. And he gets killed for calling Victarion horrible and stuff. Like, Victarion is so comically buffoonish and evil that I just love the chapter so much because I just think it's hilarious. But
is that the one where he has Mokoro tell him the prophecy of the horn, that in order to claim it, he has to kill Euron?
The horn does appear, though. Keep in mind that the Victarion sample chapter from the Winds of Winter gets more into it, where he actually like reads the glyphs and like they devise a plan for like 3 different thralls to blow it. So I mean, Mokoro's there, and Mokoro is like influencing him during this chapter, but it's not so specifically about the horn like it is like the sample chapter is.
Gotcha. Because I remember one of the Victarion chapters. The whole thing is like, in order to like claim the horn, you have to do so with blood. And I was under the assumption that so he has to kind of, because I'm assuming the horn is Euron's, like that's the owner, and so he has to kill Euron to claim it.
Yeah, that's the Victarion sample chapter from the Winds of Winter. But and then you know, my theory is that the horn doesn't have any powers at all. But I think I once had a theory that the horn was actually binding people. But in the end, I'm just like, nah, like they just got wrapped up in getting bribed and everything. And or maybe there was some sort of psychic influence or something, but I don't necessarily think the horn has any abilities at all. Or if it did, like they're unable to access them. You know, it's lost Valyrian technology. But we'll see. Number 3, I have the epilogue. I think the epilogue is, I think it's a chapter that works on so many levels. It's George R. R. Martin at his finest. Like, I love small council chapters. I fucking love small council chapters where they go around the horn and you're figuring out what's going on every place in Westeros. You know, I think, Cersei 4, A Feast for Crows, and I think it's Tyrion 3, A Storm of Swords. Like, I just love like them going around the horn and talking about the kingdom. It's just a great, cool thing. And
the best ones are when like Cersei is in the small councils because you could tell she hates everyone in there. Specifically, I forgot the character's name, but the guy that coughs.
Giles Rosby. Yeah,
her annoyance to Giles Rosby.
Yeah. If this were feast chapters, Cersei 4, you know, would be near the top. I mean, it's probably the top of Feast. It might be the top of both books if we put them together. I mean, I love Cersei 4 too. Cersei 4 is a better chapter than Epilogue, but Epilogue is still pretty awesome. I love them going around the horn. I love the characterization of all the different people we meet, whether it be, you know, Mace Tyrell or Red Ronnet or Randall Tarley. And then obviously like the, you know, Kevin going to, you know, running into Varys at the end is, you know, an incredible ending. And what a way to end the book. What a cliffhanger, you know.
Even in the show, I think it's a shame that we didn't get that scene where Varys is the one that kills Pycelle at the end of season 5. Like that's how season 5 I think also should have ended. Not only with Jon's stabbing, but Varys coming in. Post-credit scene, fuck it.
I mean, when you really think, and this also gets into the last couple chapters too, but you think about my favorite moments from Feast and Dance, and when they happened in the show, they were either cut and didn't happen in the show, or when they happened, they were done so poorly that it was just a letdown. Like, you know, one of my favorite scenes from the books is the Kingsmoot, and what an incredible scene. Like, that should have been the end of season 5, kind of like cliffhanger kind of scene, I think. You know, like we haven't seen Asha in a while, and then we go to the Kingsmoot. Or you haven't seen Yara in a while, let's go to the Kingsmoot. And then what we see in the show is this just really anticlimactic, like, horrible scene where Euron just walks up and is like, no one's got a cock. You're going to be my king. Let's murder my niece and nephew.
I hated that the line delivery. It was so bad. We're my niece and nephew. Let's go murder. Murder so them. Cringe.
Oh God.
So
like,
cringe.
Taking one of the greatest scenes, like, you know, a chapter that's Red Wedding level and just ruining it. And here we have Epilogue, Red Wedding level scene. Like, fuck yeah. This should have been like the end of the season. Something incredible. And nothing. We don't get it.
Instead, Varys stays in Essos. I think at the very beginning of season 5, he brings Tyrion to Essos, and then he disappears for most of it. And I was expecting him to appear at the very end, back in King's Landing.
Everybody was like, he's got to get back to King's Landing.
No, he's a Marine. And then he spends all of season 6 in Marine with Tyrion doing nothing. So
doing nothing. Yeah, he totally could have done that scene.
By the way,
it wouldn't have been hard.
On the topic of the Kingsmoot, I fucking hate how there are no, in case you haven't noticed this, in the show, there are no other Ironborn houses. It's always just Greyjoy, and that's it. The Ironborn are all just one giant Greyjoy clan. Or they're all just Ironborn.
They all wear the same outfit.
Yeah.
They all have, like, you know, the Star Trek thing where everybody from the same planet all wears the same clothes. Yeah. It's
same haircut.
Same hair.
Same
it's
weapons.
It's dreadfully bad. I think the Ironborn were I mean, probably the worst done people in the entire show. Like, you know, it's like a lot of the peoples were done differently, but still okay. Like, I didn't mind how the Myronese were portrayed. I didn't mind how the Carthene were portrayed. You know, I didn't even mind, like, how the Dornish were generally portrayed, like their costumes, how they looked, the feel of that environment, everything. But when you're talking about, like, just fucking phoning something in, my God, the Ironborn. And this goes back to season 2. I mean, this goes back to season 2 with Dagmar Cleftjaw and all that. But just, what a bunch of buffoons. That's what they are. They're just buffoons. Okay. Number 2, the Dragontamer. The Dragontamer.
I expected as such.
Yeah, the Dragontamer is such an incredible chapter. Just going down and just the tension you feel, like, as Quentin descends into the dragon pit of the pyramid. He descends into the pyramid. It's done so well. I just love the characters of Arch and Drink so much. Man, what wonderful characters that I just want to see in the future more and more. And it's just there's so much wonderful tension built up, and then you get to the dragons and you're like, oh my God, like, what's gonna happen? Is he gonna do it? And then just having it ripped from you and being like, they don't even tell us what happens. And then the rest of the book, you're like, what happens to Quentin? And we're never really told. As much as many people are like, oh, he's dead. We're never really told, you know, of what exactly happened in that pyramid. So, yeah, one of my favorite, great chapter. And then number 1 is, of course, Theon. Theon and his escape from Winterfell. Again, like, something that was so incredible in the book and is just such a whimper of a scene in the show. Like, all the tension of, like, him bringing those buckets up and bringing the buckets down, and then, you know, going out to the, you know, him walking with a bucket of water, and the amount of tension in his head, or your description of, like, the breakfast scene and everything falling apart there, and what's going to happen, and getting out to that wall and being like, oh my gosh, how are they going to escape? And then him jumping and like being like, oh God, what's going to happen? It was overwhelming, that scene. And it's just, I still remember my first read and being just wanting to get to those chapters and being like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? So that's, that was my favorite. You said you did at least I asked him to do a top 10 and he's like, I'll do a top 3.
Well, because for the most part, you and I have the same ones with the exception of the King's Prize. I'd change that to Sacrifice, but
So you'd say Epilogue is your favorite?
No, I'd say the Theon chapter is the best and my favorite, but I'd say that one, the Epilogue, Sacrifice, and the final Jon one. I just like it when they have that surprise ending that catches you off guard. But no, I like the Theon escape the most. I was hoping they would kind of somewhat mimic it, but not really. You just have somewhat of a tense standoff with who was Ramsay's girlfriend? I forgot her name. The crazy one. Miranda. Miranda. You just have like a tense standoff. And I figured they wouldn't be able to do it because they killed off Mance Rayder. And yeah, there's no Val or any of the Spear Wives. So yeah, but no, Theon, I really like Sacrifice because of how it ends. Like out of nowhere, we get Tycho just coming out of nowhere. Yeah. And the Epilogue is also pretty hype.
What's amazing is going through that list, how like, because again, my list is like Jon IV, Jon like planning with Stannis, doesn't happen in the show. Watcher doesn't happen in the show. Bran III sort of happens. I guess being generous, Bran III happens, but they make it into Tower of Joy, which, I guess a lot of people are pretty excited about that scene. So I'll say that like they didn't completely fail with Bran III, but I still don't really understand what they were doing. The Ghost in Winterfell, I suppose, happens, like not in the sense that they're in this snowstorm, but he's living this hellish life at Winterfell. But you don't get that whole like we're starving, like there's all these powers within Winterfell like feuding with each other. So you don't really get it. King's Prize we don't get because Stannis just walks. He just walks, and then we have that one episode where he's snowed in, and then 20 good men come in and burn his tents, but we don't get any of that. Jon XIII, I suppose he gets stabbed, but we don't have him getting the pink letter. We don't have him like riling up the wildlings or anything like that. Kingbreaker, we don't get. Victarion, we don't get. Epilogue, we don't get. Dragontamer, we don't get.
The Epilogue, they have no excuse for. Like the Epilogue and Theon, like Theon, they have an excuse for. Dragontamer, Kingbreaker, they have excuses for those because they killed off Barristan in season 5, if you recall. Victarion, they can't do because they didn't hire the Victarion actor. They killed off Mance Rayder for Theon. The only ones they don't have an excuse for the most part, is the Epilogue. The Epilogue they could have easily done, but they chose not to for some reason. Everybody else, they either didn't hire them or they killed them off. They either didn't cast the characters or killed off characters.
I mean, you're right that it would have been so easy to do Epilogue. And in a sense, like, they just had all these characters sitting around, so where they're like, well, let's just kill them all at the same time in one big episode. But you could have killed off Kevin and Pycelle earlier, and it had that big moment with the Epilogue with Varys' return. But it's amazing looking at the list how, like, all of my favorite scenes from all of my favorite chapters from Dance were not adapted, or were adapted just very poorly. Like Bran III and Theon are the only ones that are somewhat adapted. And I guess there was some tension to Theon helping Sansa escape and her, unlocking stuff and heading to the top of a wall. But it's just not to the same degree of like the snowstorm, the infighting, the pails of water, like the chase. Like it was just not the same. Not the same.
They hired a Wyman Manderley actor, but he was never there with Bruce Bolton, so
yeah.
There were no phrase for that infamous line. It was just the Bolton forces. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that could have been put together. They had the sets. They had the actors. They could have done it. But, they didn't. They didn't. Huh. It's too bad. Too bad. Anyway, that's that.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.